What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Marketing Nomad Show. It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. Today, I have with us nutritionist, mentor, weight loss coach, Jonathan with us. John, how are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you so much, John. I'm excited to, record this entire podcast episode with you as well. So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself so that my listeners can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've had this really varied background. I've been a nanotechnology researcher at University of Victoria in Canada. I've been a marine engineer in the Navy. I spent 6 years doing that. I've traveled the world as a globetrotting nomad and English teacher for 3 years. I've been a power line technician, a heavy equipment operator, and I also have been a serial entrepreneur with I've had 4 businesses. I've had 2 failed businesses, and I have 2 businesses that I run currently. And so, yeah, I guess I've done a lot looking back.
That's a lot of hats to wear, John. I'm so excited to get into all of that. But for the most part, guys, what you're going to be listening today, we're going to be talking to John about his journey so far. Most importantly, I think we're going to find out how he reached where he is today. So, I just want to give like a behind the scenes update to you guys that this podcast episode is actually not scripted at all. John and I, we hopped on a call and then we decided, okay, no, we're not going to go with any questions. We're just going to do this freestyle. So I'm excited, and I think that this is, one of the things that John and I wanted to, point out as well. Having the confidence to speak on spot and just having a conversation with a fellow entrepreneur. So I'm super excited to see how this podcast episode will go. And I know that John is going to give us so many tips being a serial entrepreneur himself. So John, are we ready?
Oh, absolutely. I love this because you're just talking about one of my favorite topics. Entrepreneurship is very near and dear to my heart. And I encourage, I think sometimes you overcomplicate business in a sense. And really, I want people to understand business is really about just an exchange of value. And an entrepreneur is someone who sees a problem and thinks up a solution to that problem. You have a successful business when people are willing to pay for the solution to that problem.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the fundamental things. And, definitely when someone asks me, Prit, how do I know if my idea is viable? I think that's something that I do tell them, that if people are willing to pay for the solution that you are providing and at a price point that, you can make a profit from, I think that's also important. Yeah, John, I
Absolutely.
think you were saying something.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And to understand, oftentimes like the first iteration of an idea you have is also not going to be the final iteration of it. And when I mentor people in business, one of the concepts I teach is called start, learn, evolve. And in a nutshell, it's exactly as it sounds. You have to start with something. You have to test it, and you have to test it with real people to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And as you learn from that, you then evolve what your offer is, and your business will grow and evolve and develop.
I think that's very, very true. And I think that it's also important not to attach yourself to the first idea that you have. What is your experience with, I know that you've had 4 businesses so far. Tell us a little bit about the
Yeah.
first entrepreneurial journey, the idea that you had. Where did you start and where did you end up with that idea?
This was not so. Currently, I run online businesses, but this was actually like a physical business. Where I live in Alberta in Canada, we have what we call the oil patch, and that's really just in reference to the whole industry surrounding like oil exploration, extraction, transportation, and refining, and that kind of thing. And so I had met with another person, an engineer who was developing a kind of a new type of trailer for what we call like light oil field hauling, or hot shot is the term we use. And so he was going to provide the trailer, I was going to provide the truck, and he was going to do the marketing, I was going to do the operation. And so we spent all this money setting up this business. For me, I was like, cool, all I have to do is really operate this business. He provides me with the clients and the stuff to move and all that. But unfortunately, his infant daughter passed away at 6 months old. And that, as it would for just about anybody, kind of pushed him off the rails. And so all of this money I'd invested in setting up this business, and all this time and getting it incorporated and getting all our paperwork done and set up with transportation, all of that was lost because he and I sort of held on to the idea for probably a little bit too long. So I continued to pay for the truck I'd purchased and all of that. it's all tax deductible because we're incorporated, but so that one kind of stung. That one cost me about 25 grand, which looking back, I mean, that's not a small sum of money, especially just when starting out. But it was not long after that was happening that actually one of my friends had another business that he was having difficulties with his business partnership, and he and his business partner were going separate ways. And because he was a friend of mine, I thought, well, I'd hate to see this business fail that he's developed. And so in my days off, I would go and I would help him. And this is now a nutrition and a supplement store. And so I have a background in chemistry and in marketing psychology, and it turns out it was actually a really good pairing for the realm of nutritional supplements. And so in one sense, that business worked really quite well. However, this individual that I was in business with, who at the time was my friend, had another life that I didn't know about. And this is the danger in business partnerships, and in business partnerships with friends or people that you think are friends and so on, right? And it turns out that he was using this business as basically to generate losses for another one of his businesses, and there was this whole accounting thing set up and so on. And I was kind of being set up to be left holding the bag. And ultimately, it was about 3 years after we'd started the business, and I invested quite a bit of money into developing this business. And here I was putting, like, my heart and my soul into this. I'd built up the client base, had built up a really good reputation, all of that. And then like a bailiff shows up one day and says, like, the rent isn't being paid. And I was like, what? That's my business partner's responsibility. He deals with that side of things. He can't things, and I deal with that, and he hadn't been doing that for like months. And anyways, so he puts a lock on the door, and I have to walk away from everything I've invested, everything, all the time, all the years, all the hours, I had to walk away from all of that. And that was pretty devastating.
Oh my God, I'm just stunned and in shock. That's I mean, it's two hell of a stories over there, but that must have been devastating, to put in your heart and soul into something only to realize that
Mm-hmm.
things were completely out of your control and not something that I think you could even do anything about. And then how did you come from there? I mean, you must have been in a position where you were really helpless.
Yeah.
You were devastated. You've also invested money, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at that point, everything, your self-confidence, your esteem, everything, all of that on the low. How did you pick it up back again?
uh I would say it's a bit of a rocky road. um the truth is, it isn't just like I picked myself up by my bootstraps and kept going. But on the other hand, like, I am an entrepreneur at heart. And it's once if you're a born entrepreneur, like, the thought of being an employee is a really difficult thing. It just doesn't work because our brains have too many ideas, too many problems we want to solve, and we don't really fit well into necessarily like a company culture where we just toe the line. And my brain is very analytical. And so I remember walking home because at that point my wife had her vehicle and she was at her job, and I was I was just walking to the bus stop and thinking, like, how am I going to explain this to my wife? Like, what am I going to say to her? Like, what do you say when it's like, well, we've lost everything, we have a mountain of debt, and all this time that I put into this business that wasn't, where it was taking time away from us and our relationship and our family and things like that, like, all that is lost. And so truthfully, like, there's kind of like a process of mourning and grief that a person needs to go through, and that I needed to go through, because even though this wasn't, we often connect grief to something like death, but this was maybe kind of like a metaphorical death. It was significant, and really grief can be connected to loss. So to kind of give place to all of this that I was struggling with and grappling with, and I mean, failure is an inevitable part of entrepreneurship. There isn't a successful entrepreneur who doesn't have some kind of failure in their background. But and in fact, you'll find there's plenty of entrepreneurs who've lost everything and built back up again. But I didn't know if I was going to be able to be this story. But I will say this: there's something strangely liberating about losing everything, because now you have nothing left to lose. And I was left with a decision here. What do I want to do? Do I want to just go back and get a job and just give up on like being an entrepreneur, even though I have, you heard some of my job history. Like, I've done so many different things because I can't stay in a job for very long, because I have too many ideas, too many things I want to do, And so like I said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I realized, no, I have to keep this going. And so I realized I built up a client base within this store, and I've been helping people, and I've been coaching people with nutrition just as an adjunct to the business of the store. Really, it was by offering nutrition coaching services. We could also incorporate sort of a supplement plan and generate some recurring revenue from this, and they get a discount on supplements and so on and so forth. Like, it was a part of the business model. And so I just decided I'm gonna launch my nutrition coaching business, but I'm going to build a virtual business, an online business that somebody can't take away from me. And so, no partnerships or anything like that. But so that's what I decided to do. And so I started with as Coach John McLernon, and with a Facebook page and Instagram page, and started posting content to help people. And that I truthfully, I wasn't. Here's the one thing: is I wasn't necessarily starting from zero, because I had built up a reputation in my city. I'd built up a clientele, or people that had knew, liked, and trusted me. And I think it's important that I mention that, because there, if I was starting all over again, how would I do it and build it from the ground up? There's steps that I would take that might be different than what I did then. But because it had this established client base and a reputation in the community, I was able to start not necessarily from zero. Yes, financially, I was starting from negative a lot, a lot of money. But from a business standpoint, I did have a bit of an audience and a bit of a client base that I could work off of.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have so many questions running through my head right now. But we'll take one question at a time. First off, I really, really think that what you say is correct. My entrepreneurial journey also started, I wouldn't say in the same way, but started from rock bottom. And as you said, it was absolutely liberating. And I think that I have been rock bottom twice in my life. It's one too many times for a 29-year-old, but I've been rock bottom twice in my life. And as you said, there was nothing more that I could lose, and it was very liberating. And for me, I also had that decision whether I would take a full-time job, or I was anyway starting from scratch, and might as well start an online business, see where that goes. So I think that this is one of the things that we connected on when John and I spoke on the first call that we hopped on together. So I'm really glad that he brought it up. And I think that once you're an entrepreneur, as John said, you will always have these ideas. There will always be something in you that keeps going. And I think that is our superpower, I really think that is what separates us from everyone else. I think that, yes, we do have too many ideas, one too many. And that's probably a con, more of a con than it is of a pro, because there's just so many ideas to go and you don't know which direction to go. But let's talk a little bit about, you didn't technically start from scratch for your third business, the third online business. Would you consider that to be something positive that came out of it? I mean, I know that the first two businesses were absolutely traumatic, and I can't even fathom what you would have been going through. But the third business, do you think it would have been harder for you to start from scratch for the third business if you didn't have the experience and the exposure from the first two?
Yes, and I also, maybe I want to slip one little thing in there for those who do choose to have a job. This isn't us talking down about those who choose to be employed. And I have been employed, and not only that, for some people, it's actually beneficial to maintain a degree of employment while building up your business as a side hustle. So I just want to make sure that we're not suggesting that people
oh my God, no,
jump
that's
all
definitely
in and,
no, I had a full-time job. I was absolutely happy there, but I had that decision and I took a chance on myself. Yes, it's completely different. Absolutely. I didn't mean to. I don't know if I came off that way, but
oh no, not at all. I always think about because I'm a mentor and I'm a coach, and I have to think thoughtfully about my words and how people receive them. And so
absolutely.
and in fact, when I'm mentoring people, I'll often say, look, if you have a job, keep that job until you've built up at least 3 months worth of savings. Not only that, but that your revenue in your business at least matches the income you're getting from your job for 3 months. By the time you've gone through both of those things, where you have 3 months worth of savings, plus your business is now at the point where it's generating revenue equivalent to what you're bringing in terms of your job, then you're now in a much more stable position, and you're less likely to make sort of risky or reckless emotional decisions.
Oh my God, I totally resonate with that because I started my business. I put in all my savings, and this is something that I recommend to every single person that I speak to. Like, don't make the mistake that I made. I mean, yes, okay, it paid off, but there was a huge risk that I took. I put in all my savings. I started from zero. My bank balance went to absolute zero when I started my business. And oh my God, the amount of anxiety that I have been through, it's not recommended. And I always tell people, yes, if you have a full-time job, start with a side hustle, and then see if it actually works out long term. And then of course there are numbers that you need to work out, as you said, but I highly resonate with that. So yes.
Yeah, and like we said, it's you can have an idea and you can be
Yes.
super passionate about this idea and go, this is an amazing idea. However, that's not necessarily how other people might feel about it, and so
Yes.
you need to create an opportunity to test it, and don't take it personally if
Yes.
not everybody's. I mean, in fact, I would say that nobody's ever going to be as passionate about your idea as you are as an entrepreneur,
Yes,
and
that's
it's
true.
nothing personal. It's that we human beings are self-interested,
Yes.
and so being able to sort of disconnect from that emotion. But now you'd asked a question that I
Yes.
didn't
Yes.
quite answer in terms of, because I wanted to put that little caveat in there. I believe you were asking if I had started again but I didn't have an audience, would that have been more difficult? And I say absolutely it would have. There You can't help but learn from failure. The thing is a failure is never complete. In other words, even from like the first business failure, I learned that I went into business. I learned a lot about myself. I went into business kind of for the wrong reason in one sense, because I saw this. It wasn't necessarily something that I was passionate about. It was just an opportunity to make some money. But what I wanted from that was like a greater degree of independence and control over my income and so on. Ultimately, it's probably a blessing in disguise that that business failed. No, in fact, it is. There's more to the backstory. That is that my former business partner in that venture turns out was using shipping containers to move guns and drugs. I wasn't aware of this, and he was using a construction company to launder money. And so it was like actually probably about 18 months after that business had failed. And it was very real. I was at the funeral of his infant daughter. I mean, drug dealers are still human beings with feelings, not to justify what they do, but at that point, even at his daughter's funeral, I had no idea he had this secret double life as well. I'm like, what is it about me and attracting business partners who have secret double lives? Um, but it was 18 months after we'd folded out that business. I had lost all contact with him and whatnot. And a police officer came to my new business at this point, which was a nutrition and supplement store, and was like, we want to ask you some questions about this individual. And I was like, cool. I haven't seen him for like a year and a half. What, did something happen to him? Is he okay? And they're like, do you read the news? I'm like, no, you should see the headline of today's newspaper. And there's like this cargo van and the mayor and the chief of police outside his house, and it's like the largest gun and drug bust they've seen in the city's history. And I'm like, I've been in that house. Where was he hiding all this stuff? These people like this, they have these double lives, and they're really good at concealing them. And so anyways, I share that just because I'm like, it's a bit of a well, it's kind of a bit of a shocker, really. But going into business, like we can like my perception was colored, but the fact that I liked this individual, he was charismatic. We actually had a friendship again. Everything about him seemed like he was a good person, and I didn't realize that I was probably dealing with a narcissist, and narcissism comes with pathological lying. Narcissists are very good at, and I'm an empath by nature, as I've learned about myself, and like that makes me perfect prey for narcissists. And I don't throw that term around lightly, though. Like, I do have a background in psychology, and in today's social media age, sometimes we just, oh, so and so's no, it's actually a personality disorder with specific characteristics. And we look back, I'm like, there were warning signs. I just didn't know what to look for because I wasn't aware that that was a thing, really. So anyways, all of this to say, when our businesses fail, we learn a lot about ourselves. It really isn't the end of the road. But when my second business failed, again, it turns out I was in business with a narcissist, a pathological liar. Once again, so what was common between the two is I was repeating a pattern of behavior, where I was getting drawn into these relationships where I was essentially being taken advantage of. And, I could say, well, they're bad people for taking advantage of me. But I also, in order to empower myself, it sounds strange to put it this way, but I had to take responsibility and say, this is partly my fault for being and it's not that I'm not a trusting person, but for being too open, for not standing up for myself, for not setting appropriate boundaries and things like that. um and as I had this understanding about my own nature and how I work with people, again, these really difficult experiences become something that I learned a lot about myself, and now I have much better boundaries in and around the relationships that I form. And so even though I lost a lot of money in these business failures, I gained a lot of invaluable life experience from going through these things.
I actually resonate with that a whole lot. I think that when you are an empath, and I am one too, I think that you do attract narcissist personality disorder people. I think you call them narcissists. And
NPD. Yes,
NPD,
yeah.
yes, that is very true. And I think that I really like the fact that you said at some point you have to take responsibility of yourself. And I feel that for me, it wasn't business wise. For me, it was relationships, like human relationships that I had formed with people as friendships
Mm-hmm.
or something more, but it was along the same tone. And it was not until I started my entrepreneurial journey that I started recognizing these things. I think that for me personally, the entrepreneurial journey is more about getting to know yourself, understanding who you are fundamentally. What is it that you attract? What is it that you don't attract? How do you get to the point where you attract what you need and stuff like that in terms of the people around you, or even manifestation in its own way and stuff like that. So I completely resonate with you when you said you understood that it was your responsibility as well. You had to take responsibility and face the facts. And I'm glad that in a way it helped you with your third online business, which is a huge success. I know for a fact. And the fact that you didn't have to start from zero and you started somewhere with a solid client base, I think that's commendable. I think that the fact that you got back up and you said, I'm ready. Yes, of course, I'm sure you would have taken your time out and stuff like that, but you got back up. I mean, I think that's what's important. I think that is, something that we should focus on and, absolutely clap for as well.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting because it was May 9th, 2018. I remember the day exactly when that business failed. And it was only like 2 weeks later that I had this Alaskan cruise booked with my in-laws who were coming over from, my wife is from Australia. And it was probably the best thing that could have happened. It was already booked and paid for and all of this, so I just went on this cruise and kind of totally forgot about everything for a period of time, and came back kind of refreshed and invigorated. And I knew that I had something. I knew that I had something of value to offer people. And you talk about getting to know ourselves in this entrepreneurial journey. And one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is being comfortable with recognizing the value we have to offer and charging money for that value that we bring to people. But when you understand that, like, the price that somebody is willing to pay for a service is a reflection of how invested they are in the decision that they're making and how the perceived value they expect to come back. Like, it's a very different way. And this isn't to say, don't let your ego inflate your sense of value. Oh, I should charge $1 million an hour because I think I'm the most amazing human being to walk the planet. Well, good luck. You might find, if you found one customer, okay, maybe you feel like you've struck the jackpot or something. But in reality, remembering that money is a medium and it's an exchange of value. And so when somebody pays you a higher price for something, they have a higher expectation of value coming back. And so it's important to understand the relationship between, ourselves, the value we bring, and the price that people are going to pay.
Absolutely. I think that's 100% true. And as you said, I mean, as a marketer, and I know that you have a marketing background as well, I mean, every decision is emotional at the end of the day. And depending on how invested they are willing to pay, and understanding that your worth, it has to convert to their perception of value as well. So there needs to be some sort of an equilibrium over there, some sort of a balancing act. And I think, okay, wait, first off, I just want to circle back, sorry, to the online business that you started out. And I actually want to know, how did you know, with the third idea that it was going to work? Were you confident? Were you not confident? Were you scared? What were your thoughts going on at that point?
Oh, definitely. I was nervous because I was putting myself into even more vulnerable position. So if we go back to patterns of behavior, part of the reason I was probably going into these partnerships is because I lacked confidence in my own value and skill set. And so partnership kind of shielded me from that a little bit. It gave me a little bit of security, if you will. And so this time it's now just me, and I'm putting myself out there. And it's a very vulnerable feeling. And not only that, like I really, in one sense, built my business on my story. And I think this is actually a really valuable piece of information for people to realize that who we are as human beings is very closely integrated into the business and value that we bring. It's not to say that you want to air all of your dirty laundry or things like that, but there is a hunger out there. People know the human story behind the business. And so here I was finally going to tell my real story about going through trauma, about gaining over 100 pounds, about becoming morbidly obese, about going through mental health struggles, losing 100 pounds, yo-yo dieting, coming back and actually, getting to the place where now I've lost the weight and kept it off, and that whole journey. And so I was able to take this whole journey that I'd been on and really sort of turn that into a path that I could guide people down. And so this business, I work as a coach, a nutritionist, and we can think about that like being a tour guide. And I often say to my clients, remember, I'm a tour guide, I'm not a Sherpa. In other words, I'm going to take you on a guided path here and help you get to this destination you want to get to, but I can't carry your backpack for you. So yeah, there's all these emotions like spinning through my head. But at a certain point, again, it's that place of like, I don't really have anything to lose. So what's going to happen next? So I just put it out there. And what was really cool was it was not received in the way that I feared. So I was afraid that when I put my story out there, that I'm going to be judged, that I'm going to be shamed, that I'm going to be ridiculed and made fun of for being human, for making mistakes, for having struggles. Like I was feeling like the world's biggest failure when I had to go home as a husband and say, like, this business failed. It cost us our life savings. We have nothing. We've lost not only the money, but this time and so on. And here I was just putting myself out there again. But what I was doing is actually I was projecting how I was feeling about myself onto my audience and assuming that they must see me the way that I see myself and so on. And when they responded with like a significant amount of support, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is connecting with people. This is resonating with people. So it was a little bit of a leap of faith in terms of putting my story out there and saying, this is why I can help you. Not just as how I can help you because of my own personal experience with this. Yes, I have the certifications with my name on that said I did the courses. But again, you mentioned that we make purchasing decisions based on emotion, and our brains we create stories to make meaning of our life experience. And when we tell our story, other people read themselves.
I think we're having a little bit of a connection problem. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. But
Okay,
you did
perfect.
freeze up there. So did what I share come through there?
Yeah, I think it did. But can you say the last sentence again, the one about personal decisions? I'm going to edit this part out and then fit it in. The one where you said decisions are based on emotions.
Oh, yeah. So we as humans, we make our decisions based on emotion, and then we justify in logic. And so what we do is we read ourselves into other people's stories, and we feel a sense of emotional connection. And because of that sense of emotional connection, we're more likely to want to purchase from them.
Absolutely. I think that is 100% true. And I think that a very significant difference that I can find by just listening to your story from your first two businesses to the third one is that you actually had a mission. Like there was something driving you, whether it was putting your story out there or using your story to help other people, saying, hey, I've been through this. I know what you're feeling. I can help you. I can help you get to where you are. And I think that is one of the most important things for an entrepreneur. I think I was giving like a small, like an Instagram story takeover a few days ago. And one of them, they asked me this question. They said, what's important for like to be an entrepreneur? And I said, this journey is hard. It's really, really hard. You need to find something that, you know, you can answer yourself saying, you know, why am I doing this? And I feel that with your third online business, you have an answer to that compared to the first two. And I think that's really powerful in itself.
Absolutely, it is, because, and you're right. Like, having a successful business today isn't a guarantee that it's necessarily going to be a successful business tomorrow. I mean, I can say that I'm like really proud that like my business has not only survived but even grown during the pandemic. But that doesn't mean there hasn't been difficult days, long days, hard nights, things like that. I do believe that sometimes there's a misunderstanding around success in business, as though it's kind of like the same thing with like weight loss. Like, yes, I've lost and kept off over 100 pounds, but it doesn't mean that I stopped being vigilant and stopped caring and stopped doing the things I need to do to maintain that. Just because you have a successful business doesn't mean that now you're sitting on easy street doing nothing while money rolls in. There's still work to be done.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I also did mention, like very recently, and it's when things are going right, you also need to figure out to keep it going right. I mean, it's not just, yeah, okay, it's fine, and you just say, you wash your hands and you run away. No, there's a lot of work. I don't think people realize that there's a lot of work in sustaining that success as well. And the minute, you take your eyes off it, it's gone. It just vanishes. And I think you're absolutely right.
Well, it's interesting because I see a lot of parallels in business and in weight loss. Maybe this is what sort of, well, it's one of the reasons why I ended up becoming a mentor and helping other people build online businesses as well. There's a few other reasons that we can dive into if there's time for it. But it's this idea that there is no like cruise control. There's no like, yes, there are times you take a little bit of a break. You might let off the gas a little bit, or you might take a little bit of a break away and get mentally refreshed and recharged and that kind of thing. I don't mean it's pedal to metal 24/7, but in the same token, there isn't really a time coming, if you want your business to continue, where you step away from it and money just rolls in and you don't have any sort of interaction or connection to it.
Absolutely. I agree with that 1000%. That's absolutely true. I have never thought of it that way. And it's very interesting that you bring that up. I think that's maybe why, as you said, you resonate really well with the two of them, because you can connect it so well. That's amazing. Is that what you teach your clients as well? Like, do you tell them the analogy? Yes.
Oh, very much so. So I say that nutrition is the cover story when I'm coaching people in that realm, because really what we're doing is it's human development, it's transformation, it's growth, it's becoming a better version of ourselves. Like, it's becoming a new person, really. Because my goal when I work in the realm of weight loss is not just to help people like lose weight. You could tie someone to a tree and starve them and they're going to lose weight, but as soon as you untie them, they're going to run back to their old patterns of behavior and eat everything in sight and probably regain the weight back and more. So I recognized here, because of my own struggles and journeys, that there needed to be a different solution offered to people, rather than just here's another 30-day diet or here's another 90-day program or something like that. We need to go through this process of transformation so that when you lose weight, you're keeping it off for good now, because you are a transformed individual. You were a better version of yourself with upgraded habits, mindset, beliefs, behaviors, that kind of thing. And so I call it brain driven weight loss is the term that I use, because the brain is the driver of behavior.
Ooh, I like that brain-driven weight loss. I think that's a really, really nice concept. I've not heard of it personally, and I'm sure that I'm going to take a look at it after we're done with this podcast episode. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the reaction of your loved ones when you said, "Hey, I'm going to start a third business." I know that yes, it was hard on you, absolutely, but I think that it would have also been really hard on your loved ones, especially your wife as well. So what was her first reaction, and what happened?
Well, I will say that like my wife is my biggest supporter. And I probably wouldn't be where I am today doing what I'm doing if I didn't have her support. I feel extremely fortunate in that regard. So my wife has often seen in me my potential when I didn't see it in myself. And this is very natural. We tend to take for granted the things that we think of as normal because it's our day-to-day experience. So I have a really incredible brain, and this is not me trying to be arrogant, but I have this really unique combination of IQ and EQ. In other words, I have a very analytical, engineering, calculating brain compared with a really high degree of emotional intelligence and awareness as an empath. I can't take the credit. I got it free of charge 39 years ago, you know, but for me, that was my normal. I didn't, you know, my wife often has to remind me, like, people's brains don't, like, people don't see the world the way that you do. Your brain is different. And you know, it's a very quick thinking, calculating type brain. Like she's like, most people hate playing games with you because you're like 8 steps ahead of them. And for me, that's just been my, like, that's just
Yeah.
been normal. I didn't think, you know, I didn't realize that it was like something, like it's something special
Yes.
and unique. And so, you know, on the one hand, she was like, there was a part of it was like, oh crap, here we go again. But on the other hand, she's like, I know what you're capable of. And so it's hard for me to try. I can't discourage you from doing this because I know your potential. And so you know, shout out to like the partners, the spouses, the wives, the husbands, whoever is supporting the entrepreneur in a sense, because it's not an easy ride.
No, it's not. I really, it warms my heart. It really warms my heart. I can actually feel how much she supported you just through your words. And you're right. I think that we take, I mean, I, at least for me, it's my parents and my sister. They've
Hmm.
just been there unconditionally, you know, just been by my side. And I think that it's important to have a support system because, like you said, some of the times you don't see what it is that makes you unique, and sometimes you don't see your potential, and it's important to have that constant and consistent support supporting you. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's so beautiful, John.
Yeah, and it's why I mentor others as well. So you know, like, I teach people how to build online businesses, and yes, there's a technical sort of course type aspect
Mm,
to that. You know, here's how you build it. And, you know, I have a framework in terms of how I help people develop business from the ground up. But I also mentor people because I recognize there's a very human element to
yes,
entrepreneurship. There's a very human element. We second guess ourselves, we get
yes,
imposter syndrome, and
yes.
so on. And so, and not only that, like, it's like when someone gets their first paying client and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Somebody paid me money. Or they get stuck with a client because they
Yes,
feel this pressure to like solve every client's problem and so on. To have a mentor who has your back in the most human way is incredibly powerful. And so that's why I do what I do in terms of mentorship. I say I'm kind of an accidental mentor. I didn't necessarily start out with the idea that this is what I was going to do. But again, it's like I saw a need, I saw a problem, and I was like, well, I have a solution for it. So that's the way the entrepreneurial brain works. I see a need, I see a problem, I have a solution, I'm going to build a solution.
absolutely. That's 100%. I really like the fact that you also, you know, coach and you also mentor your audience. And I think that when you are coaching business owners, like I feel this in my field as well. Like I'm a consultant, and most of the times I know I can sense that, you know, my client is a little scared because probably it's a launch coming up, and part of my job is also to mentor them. And I really like the fact that you think that there is a
Mm-hmm.
combination of both. That highly resonates with me as well. So, John, I want to circle back to the fourth online business that you said that you were talking about earlier, and I know that you told me that that was a successful business. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a business that I kind of stepped into in a sense accidentally. I didn't I didn't set out necessarily to become a mentor, and to be fair, there's what I call a guru sphere. In other words, there's sort of this circle of like gurus and mentors out there that are kind of predatory, and I have experience having been in that. I've been a mentorship client as well as I've been a coach inside a mentorship program. And so I understand how that industry kind of operates. And so as an entrepreneur, once again, I kind of saw a problem and recognized that I had some value and I had a valuable way of solving that problem. And so it started out accidentally, where a coach in my city who had previously run a bricks and mortar business came to me and was like, hey, would you teach me how to build an online business? And of course, my entrepreneurial brain said, well, if I'm going to teach one person to do this, I might as well develop a course about this. And that's exactly what I started doing. And so it's been almost 2 years that I've been mentoring coaches as well. And I kind of call myself an under the radar mentor, in that I primarily do operate that business via word of mouth. And that's, if you do a good job with people, they're going to tell other people about what it is that you do. And so I teach people how to build online, like, coaching and consulting businesses really from the ground up. And in a nutshell, what I do, I mean, I approach building business in a relatively simple fashion. It's like building a house. So the first thing we would do is we'll build what I call a guest house or a granny flat. What that is it's a very simple and basic structure that doesn't really cost a lot of money to operate, but allows you to start bringing clients into it. The thing is, it's not necessarily scalable, but it allows you to start bringing revenue in right away while you build out your main sort of scalable infrastructure. And then if we're going to build our main business, we need a foundation. So we're going to figure out who it is that we serve and why, and what our offer is, what is the promise. The second part is the digital infrastructure itself. That's like the framing of a house, and that is, how do you deliver on your promise? What is like, and that's from like sort of a technology perspective. So how do you deliver on that promise that you made? The third part is kind of like the interior design, and that is the client experience. So how do you create a client experience that not only has clients paying you revenue, but staying with you and also telling other people what you do. So there's the revenue retention referrals. And the fourth part is what I call the housewarming party. And that is, well, you've built this business. You want to tell people what it is that you do because people aren't going to discover you by accident. And how do you do that in a way that isn't, spammy and annoying and things like that? And so, and then I guess the X factor in all of this is that I'm a one-to-one mentor. So what I found is that in most sort of mentorship programs, what these mentors are trying to do is they're just trying to jam as many people as possible into their program with as little human contact as possible, jamming people into group calls with 30 to 60 people and so on. And they're really losing the human element of it. They're doing it because they're trying to hit certain revenue targets and be able to brag about the money that they made. And for me, I charge a fair price for what I do, but it's not really about being able to brag on social media about hitting revenue targets. It's about genuinely helping people succeed in terms of building their business, because integrity is a really core part of what I do. And so when I work with somebody, I work with them as a one-to-one mentor. That means that not only am I helping them with the technical side of things, but with the human side of things. Being an entrepreneur means struggle with things like imposter syndrome, second guessing ourselves. What do I do now that a client's paid me money? I have this difficult client, and so on. Well, I've got experience working with hundreds of clients myself, having built and run successful businesses, learned a lot from, and so on. So I really bring an intangible human element to our mentorship as well. And I think that's what really sets it apart.
I think that's amazing. I think that your framework really hits every single aspect. Like as you were talking about it, I'm just mentally checking like, yes, oh yeah, I did that when I first started. Oh yeah, then I did this. And I think that you are providing such a solid structure and such clarity as well. I think that, with the framework that you do have, I think one aspect of, your potential business owner client is going to probably feel a lot more calm and composed about the whole situation, having such a framework in place. So I really liked that. I actually wrote it down. It's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah, we can put the link to my website in the show notes if anybody wants to check it out. And the thing is,
Absolutely.
here's the other thing that I do. I back my mentorship with a guarantee, and that is that you will earn back your investment, or I'll work with you until you do, up to 12 months. Now, to be fair, if in 12 months you couldn't earn back your investment, you didn't really have a viable business. And so my goal is that people would earn back their investment in 3 months or less. But I will continue to work with someone if they don't, for whatever reason, because as a part of, like, integrity is such a core value for me, that I recognize that somebody, especially if they're starting a business, it's a really emotional and difficult, challenging decision and investment. So I want them to know that they're going to make their money back. That, because that's the biggest thing that I felt burned when I was a mentorship client in mentorship programs, is that I pay this sum of money, and then it's like, once they had my credit card and they charged me this money, they didn't really care. They would basically gaslight me and say if I wasn't getting results, it's because I wasn't working the system, or some, things like that. It wasn't helpful. It was really just sort of this mental manipulation. And so again, recognizing there was this whole problem out there with this industry that's like, and coaches in particular get preyed on, because coaches tend to be empaths. And so, I realized I need to be a mentor in this space, because we need empathic mentors who actually treat these coaches like human beings instead of just like dollar signs.
Absolutely. And, kudos to that for seeing, recognizing that there was a gap in the market. B, it was something that, you could make a difference to the people around you. I think that that's that's where we like to find ourselves, you know, something where we're making a difference, but at the same time, yes, it is also fueling our own passion. And it's also, you know, helping us survive as well. At the end of the day, I
Hmm.
think as an entrepreneur, we would like to strike that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I find it incredibly fulfilling because really mentorship and coaching in one sense, I'm doing very similar things. I'm looking at human potential. So whether it's somebody who comes to me and says, I want to lose weight or I want to build a business, in both cases, what we're doing is we're looking at what is the human potential that resides within them and can I help them unlock that potential? And that's really where the real power of this lies. And I say that my coaching superpower is X-ray vision. So being able to see the potential in people that they can't see in themselves and then guiding them to that place. And that's why I get so much fulfillment out of what it is that I do.
Absolutely. I think I really resonate with that. And I think that's why I wanted this episode to be such a freestyle, because I absolutely connect with, and this is something that, you know, John and I were talking about during our first call, is that there is just so much similarities in our thought processes. And I absolutely resonated with the last one. And I know that we've talked so much in this podcast episode. And I know that all my listeners have learned so much, you know, from dealing with failure to, you know, recognizing when to let go of an idea, when to start a new one, how to start a new one, the framework that you've taught. But if we could wrap up this entire podcast episode in 3 actionable tips for my listeners, what would it be, John?
One, don't quit your day job. And what I mean by that, and that's not said in a derogatory fashion, but what I mean is
Yes.
if you have an entrepreneurial idea, make sure, like, don't just take a sort of fantasy fueled leap into the abyss going, it's going to work because I love it so much.
Yes.
Rather, it's like develop it and test it first, because you make better decisions when you're emotionally grounded. And so if you know that you have a secure income coming in, you can now take some risks as you grow and develop your business. Number 2 would be the principle that I call start, learn, evolve. And that is that you could just spend like months turning an idea over in your head and procrastinating and trying to make everything perfect. And it's an impossible task. Rather, just start with something, figure out what's working, what's not, ask your clients for feedback. That's okay. You're allowed to ask them for feedback because you say, I want to make this better. And then as they give you that feedback, don't take it personally. Be grateful because their feedback is gold. They're telling you what they want and how they want you to better serve them. You figure that out, you make an incredible business. And, you know, I'm trying to think what would be the best third one. Reach out to me and have a conversation.
Good one.
Now, that sounds like a bold thing to say, because you think, oh, you're just going to pitch me. I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. We're just going to have a human conversation. You can test your idea. I mean, you can share your idea with me. You can tell me where you're struggling. And I'm just going to show up in this call and I'm going to serve you and give you as much value as I possibly can. Now, if in that, you know, in the giving of value and serving you and helping you move forward with your business, you decide, hey, I'd like to go work more with you. Awesome. We can talk about that. But you know, I think people are afraid, you know, I'm going to jump on this call and you're going to manipulate me and get my credit card number and charge me and gaslight me and stuff like that. They might not put it in those words, but that's essentially what has happened to me in the past. So I understand those fears. And that's why I open myself up and say, let's just have a conversation like 2 human beings. There's so much value in bouncing your idea off someone who's experienced in business, who's done it successfully, who's failed in business. Like I can bring such a unique perspective. And so, you know, we'll put a link in the notes where you can book a call with me free of charge, no pitch. We're just going to talk about your offer, your business, and how we can make it better.
I think that's amazing. I really, like, as a business owner and entrepreneur myself, I think that sometimes all I just need is, you know, someone listening, you know, just not, you know,
Yeah.
you just listen, and, you know, help me get all those thoughts that are running inside my mind, the million of one of them, just out
Mm-hmm.
there and, you know, bounce the idea off. So I really respect what you are doing. And I think that I think it's an undervalued service that you are offering over here. Truly, I really think that not many people would think that, you know, it's something that they can take advantage of, but I really think that people should. I think that you know, as you said, are hesitant because they feel they're going to be manipulated or whatnot. And, it's their experience. I can't really judge that. But if you are listening to this podcast, definitely do, try to reach out to John, talk to him. I personally have spoken to him on 2 different occasions, and one being this podcast episode. And I know that he genuinely is invested in, helping people grow their business. And I think that's a really nice thought, John. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I love the space that you're holding here for conversations like this. This has been one of my most interesting conversations around business and business development, because so many people want to talk about like tactics and strategies. And believe me, I have plenty of those. I wrote 4 courses on this, but what I really think gets missed and doesn't get talked about enough is like the human and the emotional journey and the personal growth and the personal development that we go on as entrepreneurs, and making it okay to struggle, making it okay to fail, making it okay to not necessarily not feel this pressure to constantly have to present yourself as super financially successful just because you have a business. It's okay to have a business that's growing and developing. And so the conversations like this, I really believe, open the door to that and give people, it really just takes some of the pressure off of being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I mean, that was my entire aim of this podcast episode. And of course, my podcast as well, even with me sharing my journey. I think that people have a very common misconception that, the minute you start your business, you're going to be earning like 10 figures. I'm just making up numbers now, but you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Totally. And I'm like, no, I'm still in 4 figures, guys. I'm slowly bringing up. And I tell people, I started at $150 a month, and I'm slowly creating, and I'm actually taking people along the journey. Okay, this is one revenue stream I've created, but it's not going to, fetch me anything until maybe a year from now, but I've got to keep working at it. And I think it's, it's these little things that people don't realize or people don't want to talk about as well. And I think that's why I started this entire podcast.
I love that you're doing that, and I love that you're taking people on this journey with you, because this is really what coaching and mentoring is. It's taking people down a path that we might just be a little bit further down a path that they want to travel, and that's all we really need to be able to help somebody along.
Absolutely. That is so true. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, John. And honestly, yes, for me too as well. It's such a unique episode where we completely freestyled it, and we were talking about real human emotions and, the emotions behind starting a business, failing, growing a business, sustaining a business, and all of those things. It's truly been amazing to have you on my podcast. So thank you, John, for spending so much time talking to me and my listeners, of course, and sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Alrighty, guys, that brings us to the end of today's podcast episode. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. If you did, don't forget to share a review. Don't forget to share this with your friends as well. This is John and I signing off today's podcast episode. Bye, guys.